Okay, so we're on the back side of the notes. So we're going to do this. So we have negative 3 over x minus 2. So the first step is always factor. This one's completely factored, so we don't have to factor anymore. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the domain. So the domain is what x cannot be. So I'm going to write domain. So what can x not be?
2.
Okay, so we have the domain is x cannot be 2. So the next thing we're going to do is our vertical asymptotes, or our asymptotes. So we have a VA, and we're going to have a horizontal asymptote. So we're going to have a VA. So if x cannot be 2, where's our VA going to be?
2.
So we have a VA at x equals 2. And so now here's the thing that we haven't done yet. So we have an x on the bottom, but we have no x's on the top. So if it's bottom heavy, so we're going to have a horizontal asymptote at y equals
0.
Y equals 0. So let's do, okay, now we can do our intercept. So for our y-intercept, we put zeros in all of our x spots. So for our y-intercept, I'll do it up here. So we have negative 3 over 0 minus 2. So when we do that, we're going to have negative 3 over negative 2, which turns into the negatives cancel. Yeah, 3 over 2. So this is y-intercept 3 over 2. So this is our y-intercept, 0 and then 3 over 2. And now we're going to do our x-intercepts. So to do our x-intercepts, we're going to set the whole thing equal to 0, but really we can just do the top equal to 0 because we know we're going to have to get rid of our fraction. So when we set 3 equal to 0, we don't have any x's at all. So that means we're going to have no x-intercepts on this problem.
What about the negative 3?
Yeah, would it be negative 3?
So if there's a negative in front, it could either be on the top or the bottom. So even if you set it negative 3 equal to 0, it'll still be no x-intercepts because there's no x's on the top. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're ready to graph. I'm going to come over here and do my graph. So we're going to do our VAs for our horizontal and vertical asymptotes first. So we have vertical at x equals 2. So I'm going to go ahead and switch a different color. So our vertical is going to be here. And since our horizontal is at y equals 0, it's going to be on this axis right here. Okay. And now our intercept, so our y-intercept is at 0, 3 over 2, so that's like 1, that's like 1.5. So that's, okay, 1.5 is like right here. And then we don't have any x-intercepts at all, so we can go ahead and write our line. So we have to have one side, we have to have a line on the left side of the vertical asymptote and the right side, and it has to go through this dot. So one of them is going to go right through here and then hug the axis, and then the other one, we don't have an x-intercept, so we can't go through with this, and we have to have it on the other side, so I put it right here.
And how do we know it goes there?
Because you have to have one on each side of the horizontal.
So
as
could
well.
they type it into their calculator right now to see?
Yeah.
Do we do parentheses for negative 3 too on the calculator? Do we put? No?
You don't need it, but make sure you're hitting the negative button and not the subtraction sign. Is anybody not getting that picture when you checked it in the calculator?
Go ahead and use this.
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you get the horizontal?
So we have, right now what we've learned is we have balance and bottom heavy. So balance is when there's so if there was an x on top, it'd be the balance one where you divide the leading coefficients. So the leading coefficient over leading coefficient. But there's no x on the top, so we call it bottom heavy. And when something's bottom heavy, it's just y equals 0. So if there's more x's on the bottom and they're on the top, the horizontal asymptote is at 0.
Or just the other way around, like there's no x in the bottom.
That's top heavy, but Ms. Goodwin's going to teach that to you guys later. It's just more dividing. Yeah. Any questions? Can we do number 4? So for number 4,
Don't forget to write y equals.
okay, so the first step is to factor this. So it's a binomial, so the first step is to take out a greatest common factor. So y equals, and the greatest common factor is
-2.
So we have -2 on the outside, and then x, and then change the sign. So -2 over here, and then all over, this one's already factored. Okay, so this is the factored equation. So now we can go ahead and find our domain. So what can x not be? 3. So x cannot equal 3. So that means, since nothing cancels, we have no holes. So if x cannot be 3, we would have a vertical asymptote where?
3.
And then we have our horizontal asymptote next. So this is the balanced one. So we have the leading coefficient divided by leading coefficient. So this one is 1. So we have -2. Do it. -2 over 1. So we have a horizontal asymptote at y equals what?
-2.
So y equals -2. And now we're going to do our y-intercept. So we're going to put a 0 in all of the x spots. So this equals just 0 plus 4 over, and then 0, so -3. So we have 4 over -3. So -4 over 3 is going to be where our y-intercept is. So 0, comma, -4 over 3. And now we have our x-intercepts, and we do have one for this one because when we set that equal to 0, we still have an x. So I'm just going to set the top equal to 0. So -4 on both sides. And then divide by -2. And when you divide by two negatives, negatives cancel. So it's just 4 over 2, which then equals 2. So we have our x-intercept at 2, 0. Okay. And now we can go ahead and draw our graph. So our vertical asymptote is at x equals 3. So go ahead and dash when x equals 3. And now our horizontal asymptote, so if we have it at y equals -2, we go down on the graph. So y equals -2 this way. And then x-intercepts and and y-intercepts. So -4 over 3 is a little bit bigger than 1. So I'm going to go like right here, just a little bit below 1. And then the same thing for our x. It's going to be on the graph right here. And now you can just draw your line. So we just have to connect this and then have it on both sides of the vertical and both sides of the horizontal. So we're just going to hug right through here and then do it on the other side, but we're going to put it in which one? We have this, the top or the bottom?
How do we know?
Because you have to have it on both sides of the asymptote, so you would know you need to have it on the side, so it can't be down here. But then we need it on the opposite side of the horizontal, so you're going to have it not here, but down in the bottom corner.
It's because you don't have another x-intercept. If you
That's-
put it up there, you'd be crossing the x-axis, and you're not allowed to have another x-intercept. Graph it in your calculator to see if you got it right.
Another question.
Yeah.
Can you go back over how to get the horizontal
Yeah.
asymptote?
Just the horizontal.
Yeah, just the
Can you go over both?
Which one?
Can you go over both of them?
The
vertical and horizontal?
Yeah. Okay, so the vertical asymptote is basically saying what x cannot be. So if x can't be 3, you know that there's not going to be any x value that is 3 on the graph. So this like asymptote right here is telling you that there's no like x equals 3 value on the graph.
Is it the same as the domain also?
Yeah, because the domain is saying that the graph will never be x equals 3. So the graph will never like pass through unless there's like a hole, which it'll never pass through that exact value, but it'll be like 2.5 and like 3.5, but it just will never go through 3. And then for the horizontal asymptote, if it's balanced, the rule is you divide the leading coefficient by the other leading coefficient. So in this case it was -2 over 1. So when you divide -2 divided by 1, it's just -2, because anything divided by 1 is itself.
I didn't see it. That's what I did.
Any other questions?